All right, so okay, the first thing on here is just going to ask you guys to explain employment at will and the expectations. So did anybody have a pretty sound understanding of employment at will that would like to explain it to us?
We had an issue with that when we revised our employee handbook because there was some wording in the district policy that said that employees are at will, but then because there were so many other policies that talked about disciplinary policies and increasing levels of discipline, that when we had the attorney look it over to update everything, he said you really can't get away with saying that the employees are at will when you put out all these other policies. And the employees were actually kind of nervous about about it saying at will, because I think employees see the words at will and the first thing they think about is, well, they could be fired because you don't like, their haircut or something like that, which I guess is kind of the case if you're truly at will.
Yeah, that's kind of what I understood it to be before I was reading some of this, is that you can get fired at any time, or you can quit at any time. But there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tanner said the definition, and that's exactly what I was going to say.
So you mentioned that there's things that go into it other than being fired or quitting at will. There's a couple of things like breach of implied contract, breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, violation of public policy, and discrimination status.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys understand what that, in the reading, what that was going over, kind of?
That article wasn't the easiest one to read through, and so I was only catching bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
What was that, Zeb?
Can you repeat the question?
I was just wondering if you understood those things that I talked about, like breach of implied contract, breach of implied covenant of good faith, and fair dealing, violation of public policy, and discrimination of statute, sorry. Because it kind of gives a definition on here. If you want me to go over it, I will. Any of those?
Okay.
Would you go over the definitions, please?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, breach of implied contract says this is a contract between the employer and the employee that is created by the actions of the employer. The employer could imply that the employee will have continued employment by making statements about how well the employee is doing. The employer could also create an implied contact through the employment manual that details termination practices. For example, a strike 3 policy that says they have to give you notice before firing. So what I kind of understood from the breach implied contract was that it wasn't an actual contract. It's just something that you kind of, I'm not sure though, had a lost word, but like that it's something that you think is supposed to happen, I guess. It's kind of
Yeah, but there's
implied.
never actually nothing in writing. It's just,
Yeah.
it's kind of,
Yeah.
everybody just assumes that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of what I got from it. So the next one's breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. This could come into play where an employer unfairly tries to avoid doing what they agreed to do under the contract by terminating the employee. The next one's violation of public policy. It says terminating an employee for refusing to commit an unlawful act, serving on jury duty, blowing the whistle, filing for workers' comp, refusing to date one's boss.
Oh, wow.
The next one's discrimination statutes. Don't forget about the anti-discrimination statutes we covered previously. Title VII covers race, national origin, gender, and religion. The Americans with Disabilities Act, the Age Discrimination and Employment Act. So we've already gone over those ones.
Yeah, it seems like we went over a lot of those things kind of earlier in the.
Yeah.
This is why they're bringing them up now. Makes sense.
So, does anyone have any questions or something they'd like to add to that?
I've always thought an implied contract was when you had a conversation with your employer and it was just implied that there was this deal and they couldn't break that deal or something like that. Am I off on that or?
No, I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is. Just like it's a contract that you think is happening, but because it was discussed, but it never was like written down or anything like that. So, all right, well, move on to the next stage. This has to do with stuff called. So, the first question is, what impact does Terry and Phil have on the company's bottom line?
Well,
It almost sounds, well, go for it, Zeb.
okay. Well, the effect that they have is that they're slowing down the process. Phil, because he just doesn't have the know-how and isn't capable. Not that he's not trying. And Terry, I think they're both in the same boat. And Terry is just, he's all around bad. He's getting get away with stuff because and he's just a waste of time. And because people have to babysit him, it's taking up their time and a more productive thing.
Yeah. So Terry was the one that was hired based off the CEO. He went scuba diving with the CEOs. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure I got them too straight. Yeah.
Which it kind of sounds like Terry's almost getting paid to do nothing. He's not benefiting anything for the company. In fact, he's kind of taking away from the English time, like Zeb was talking about. think even the boss said that once she talked to him, then all of a sudden Terry came around and just started asking her tons of questions. Would always be coming into her office, and she finally had to tell him, "Hey, you have to figure those out for yourself." So it doesn't sound like he's really contributing to it. The other guy, I don't know, I kind of feel bad for him almost, and I almost feel bad for the managers just because it's kind of hard to determine, like, well, you don't want to fire Phil right when he's sick because then that could start a lawsuit, which might not end well for the company. But now since he's been back to work and he knows his performance isn't good, then I think it might be a good time to fire him. Or at least to do one of those, like the PIPs, where they sit down and kind of make a plan for him. And that might be a good thing to do with Phil.
Thing is, didn't it say nobody's ever come back from a PIP?
Yeah.
So,
They could start off. I don't know.
Yeah. PIPs like sets them up for failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, if they really want to get rid of Phil and they want to kind of avoid the lawsuits, then that would be a good way to actually have documentation to saying, oh, he didn't meet these qualifications. So this is the reason we're firing him, not because he's sick.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like that.
what do you guys think about if the company's big enough to absorb a couple of people, especially the guy that was sick? Is it kind of a good thing to, just find a position where he's not really going to do any damage, but, just keep him on and, try to use him as much as possible just because you want to, help him and his family out?
I didn't think it was that good of an idea. I don't know. I didn't really get why they couldn't eliminate some personnel that weren't really needed. I didn't understand why that was a rule in the negotiation.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying though, that I think that's what they did at first, is that they gave him kind of a new position when they took on that other company, that they thought that he wouldn't do that much damage at. But yeah, it'd be kind of hard to say, because you would want to help out him and his family at the same time, I think.
Yeah, because one thing she said was that, it would really look bad for the company to, everybody kind of got behind him and went and supported him in the hospital and donated their sick time and things like that. Kind of looked bad for him to come back from that and just get terminated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question is, what obligations does the manager have to the company based on that information? As according to the manager, Terry makes no contribution, so all of his salary and benefits are pure cost in a company that is only making $300,000 a year. Phil seems to be less of a financial liability.
That's really hard because, I mean, you know that both of them are not performing well, and if you picked the one that the CEO didn't like rather than the one he did, I mean, you're going to face some serious discrimination. And I mean, the right choice would be to get rid of Terry over Phil, even though they're both terrible, but he's the lesser of the two evils. But there's no way you can convince, I mean, your boss, because your boss is friends with him. So
Yeah. So, based on what we've learned about employment at will and exceptions, what legal obligations could the manager have to Terry or Phil?
Well,
Are you talking?
I think they do have obligations since there's a process in place to do reviews. And, if they get a certain level on their review, then they're placed in the PIP. And so I'm assuming that all those things are kind of documented in policy. So they would have an obligation to follow those policies. Sounds like they have fired people, just walked them out the door. But I think you'd have to have some evidence of something really, really bad that, happened right then, not just a pattern of not really pulling their weight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what if they terminated either Terry or Phil? What could they possibly come back at the company for? What type of lawsuits could they form?
Well, Phil would definitely probably say discriminating because he was sick. I don't know what Terry could come back with.
Does it say how old Terry is? I think he's over 40.
Yeah.
So he could have an age discrimination saying, well, they fired me so they could bring in a younger person who's going to work more hours, because the manager did say that the young people worked a lot more hours.
Yeah. Also, with Terry, it could be possibility of an implied contract breach, just because the CEO could have said something to him that we're unaware of.
That's true. And that'd make it really hard.
Yeah. What ethical obligations does the manager have to Terry and Phil?
That's the thing I kind of struggle with, because the manager has really two ethical obligations, maybe three, to the company and the shareholders, to, be fiscally responsible as far as labor costs, but also an ethical obligation to the employees that, they're counting on the company to provide, an income for them and their families. So I think you just have to balance that. And at some point, if the employee's not producing what they need to keep the company profitable, then I think your obligation to the company overrides the obligation to the employee.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be fair with them. So I think, rather than do the charade of a PIP, sit down with them and say, we really want you to be able to be productive, and I know you don't have this experience, but what if you went to like a coding school or something like that, and got some more experience, maybe some night classes or something like that. And if the employee wants to do that, then I think they probably would, and probably improve their performance. But at least, be fair and open with them.
I actually like that idea, because, might as well give him the chance to learn. Like, if Terry, ask him if that's what he wants to do and see what his goals are. His 6-month interview is coming up, so might as well just talk about that with him. And maybe, I think Normat was on a right track, is maybe suggest some classes that are going to help him succeed. So then you're also making the CEOs happy, but you're also making Terry so he'll be, I guess, helpful to the team. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. So Norman kind of hit on the obligations that the manager has to the company. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add to that one?
I think when it comes to obligations to the company, you also have to make sure you're doing everything legally so that as a manager, you don't expose the company to liability or unnecessary liabilities from an employee suing the company.
And yeah, like that's good. What's the obligations that she has to the other employees?
I think, I don't know, to other employees, like you want to be fair because you don't want to, I guess, make them carry more of a load than they need to if the other members aren't contributing. It's not really fair to them. I think that's probably the biggest thing that's attached with that is at least if I were working on a team and I saw somebody was just absolutely not doing anything, or they'd always come over and come talk to me, kind of take away time from my work and affect my performance, then I'd be a little frustrated.
Yeah,
If it kept continuing, I guess.
we kind of already brought up how Terry was always going and asking that in other employment for help, like questions and stuff.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but I think it was one of my professors. They were talking about how they had a guy kind of like Terry who'd go around and ask for help. Oh, no. It was Brother Eager on campus. He was the CMO for Denny's. And when he first got put in, he wasn't quite sure what the CEO wanted. And he would keep going and asking the CEO what his opinion was, and the CEO told him, like, how much do I pay you? Because obviously I should be paying you because I'm doing all your work. And I mean, he's like, yeah, I know how to do all this. The better solution is to go do it, and then if it's wrong, I mean, you can go back and fix it, and they can give you feedback that way. But that was just kind of an off example. But Terry, I mean, he has no clue what he's doing because he has no job experience, so he's just wasting people's time. And it kind of feels like Phil is just in a unuseful stage. I don't know how else to put it. He's just doesn't have the know-how or capability to do what he's supposed to.
Yeah.
You have to provide these little off jobs for him. So as an employee, I'd be like, they're just kind of keeping this guy around as like a pet.
Yeah. That's pretty humbling example. Okay, so the next question is, what's her obligation to herself?
I think she has the obligation to do what she knows is right. I mean, she's known for getting things done and being a certain type of person and not being afraid to be that person. And I'm sure after being approached by some VPs, she's scared, but I think she needs to stand up, and we'll probably agree on that. And she'll probably end up getting fired with some additional reading you have, but stick to who she is.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's kind of what I was thinking, just making sure that she's fair to herself. So, how well is the company and the case doing with its HR practices in general?
I almost think they're kind of struggling with it just because, I don't know. It seems like they're having a hard time making the decisions on whether to fire them or whether to not or what's legal. It doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of a policy in place. Or maybe the lady just doesn't know so much about it. I think we've talked about that in some of the other group discussions, is about how about there needs to be kind of a strict policy in place because it just makes everything so much easier.
Yeah, it kind of seems like they don't have very many policies at all.
Right.
I think they could really learn from this manager because, her being really strict on the hiring, I think has resulted in her having above average people in her section. So I think if they, kind of followed her example and did the hiring that way, and then I'll bet she seems pretty smart, she could probably put together some type of a better, I don't know if the performance appraisal or the PIP, something that would help employees reach their potential rather than just try to document why they got fired.
Yeah. So, what is the PIP for?
Well, it's supposed to have be a plan for improvement, but she says it's just a way to document and justify firing someone. So she thinks it's kind of a joke.
Yeah.
So maybe they need to take a look at that and look at what do they need to change to kind of change the mentality about the PIP. Because if it's just setting them up for failure, then maybe they should just kind of get rid of it and then completely come in with something new and rename it almost. Change it so it's like actually going to help the employee improve and change.
A better way to evaluate.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie, the PIP can be kind of like a death sentence.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Before we're gonna hang you or something. I think
Yeah.
because of that, I mean, it has a good fear factor to scare employees, especially with their rating. But I think love is been like showing that you care about employees is more important than striking fear into their hearts. I think it could work out something new.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. Do you guys think that the employees have a clear picture of what the company wants from them, how they are performing?
Not really. It seems to be kind of assumed. If your manager likes you and you get above a 3.0, then it seems like it's just like, okay, we're good.
Yeah. So, do you think that the managers can make good decisions about these two individuals based on their records and stuff?
I think so. I mean, if they're going to really actually use the rating system of like 3.0, 3.5, and if both of these employees, if their manager feels that they're a 2.5, then they should kind of consider letting them go if they're going to really stick to that scale.
Yeah. I just don't think the company has the tools in place for the managers to effectively help people self-correct, or if the managers have to correct, it's not really a good system.
Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely agree that they need to have a little better way to evaluate their employees and be able to record exactly how they're doing. Okay, so for the final decision, what do you guys think that the manager should do with Phil and Terry? So, who thinks that they should fire Terry?
I think they should fire Terry.
Yeah.
I think so. I think
Fire
it's fine.
both of them, but
Okay, so we got 3. Yeah, I think they should fire Terry too. So, all of us agree that they should fire Terry. What about Phil?
I agree. I think they should fire him, but before they end up firing him, it almost, I don't know. I think it'd be good to do something just to make sure that, like the PIP, just so they have some other basis. They're saying we're firing you because of this. So they have actually written documentation so they don't get sued about the health reasons.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
That's my
I
only
agree.
thought.
I think they should do that
But
as
then
well, and they should still get rid of both of them.
What do you think, Norman?
Yeah. I think if the company can afford to put Phil in a position where he could perform, I think I'd want to try that before I fired him.
Yeah, I was kind of torn about Phil too, just because it seems like he's just got back from this illness and everybody's rallied behind him. If they fired him, it might have consequences. So,
Yeah, I think morale and everything really kind of comes into play with Phil. Like I said, if we can get him in a position where he can contribute, but we don't have to fire him, I'd like that.
yeah. So, what could we do instead of firing Terry? What are some alternatives to firing Terry?
Go put him on someone else's team so he can be their burden.
There you go. Then I
You'd
think
be
Norman brought
surprised
up
how often. You'd be surprised how often that happens.
then Norman brought up the fact that you could put him through some training classes.
Yeah, I like that. So, what message will firing or not firing Terry send to other employees?
Well,
If
that
they don't,
mediocrity is
yeah,
tolerated.
exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of not fair to the other employees. It says that there is another reading for part 2 of the case. Did you guys see that? I didn't really look at it too much.
Yeah, it was
I
after
didn't read through it.
it's supposed to happen after our group discussion, I think, but I bet it just says what actually happened.
Okay, so if everyone wants to go to there, it asks us to read it. So was everybody able to open that up?
Yeah, I'm just pulling it right now.
Yeah.
My computer's being slow.
It says you need a password, but I got into it without a password. So
Yeah.
if we want to take maybe 10 minutes to read that.
Okay, sounds good. I'll start. Okay, I finished.
Yeah, I'm good.
Me too.
Okay. So, what did you guys think about what the managers did? What did they do well?
She did. I really liked how she handled Terry's situation and kind of setting him up to succeed. Like, even though she's like, "Okay, you're leaving the team. Like, you're not succeeding here. You have to find a different job. We want you to go out. We want you to get a good job, something that's a good fit for you." She was more of helping him out the door rather than kicking him out the door. And she really was concerned about him and actually wanting to help him. The difference.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting way to go about Terry's situation, but it was good. He found a new career and was doing well in it, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, people that aren't really a right fit for the job, they're not really that happy because they're insecure because they don't know when they're going to get fired, and their self-esteem and everything's pretty low because they know they're not superstars. They know they're probably not qualified for that position. So it's really better to either move them into somewhere where they're comfortable and where they can perform and produce rather than let them just sit there and fail.
Yeah.
I really liked how compassionate she was. I mean, she didn't want Terry to be put on a PIP, and I think that was really nice of her, and it helped ease the situation of him getting such a bad score. And I think it helped him as an individual too, doing what she did, and obviously because he ended up in a good company with a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Phil, I think that's the best way they could have handled it. They could have maybe put him on another team sooner, but I mean they had to wait until the spot opened up. But he was just a liability till because of a possible discrimination. So
Okay. So, what did she do that was not effective?
Seemed pretty effective to me.
Yeah, I thought she did a really good job.
the only thing that wasn't effective is not doing something about Phil sooner, because they had already replaced him, and then he had just wasted time until that spot opened up. So they should have, I feel like, done something similar as to the effect of finding him a different place on a different team or something else that he could be good at in the company.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's all the questions that's on here. So, is there anything else that you guys want to bring up or talk about before we end?
I'd like to kind of nail down what we have to do for the doohickey, because with graduation and everything, I probably won't be able to do the editing or conclusion or anything like that because I want to get it done probably next week. So,
I could do the conclusion and introduction.
I don't mind doing the editing. I can do that part. That might actually be best for me.
and there's only 2 topics. The one for this week, dismissing and layoffs, and the one for next week, workplace and society.
So
I'll do the workplace and society.
well, I feel like
I'll make
somebody
another Google Doc real quick. Sorry.
need to talk to the teacher and ask him about what the third person should be doing, or either Lexi or Jerem, whoever decides to do the.
How to break it up?
Yeah.
Workplace and society.
Well, I'll do workplace and society. We just need somebody to do dismissing and layoffs.
Oh, okay.
I think for this one, I'm pretty sure he said something at the beginning of the semester about the last doohickey only has 2 instead of 3.
Yeah, well, maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
He'll probably say something in the weekly thing when it comes up. But like I said, I just want to get a head start on it. So,
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
so who was going to do the editing?
I can.
And will
Or we can double it up too.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I don't know. This next week might be crazy for me because my wife is due any day now.
All right.
So who knows what's going to happen. Girl.
Nice. You guys got a name picked out?
My choice. We would have named her a long time ago, but my wife wants to see her before she names her.
See what she looks like, huh?
Yep. I was like, I think she'll look the same, but that's just me.
What was the name of if you had to roll, though?
Yeah. But we're really excited.
So what's your pick,
So, yeah.
Tanner, if you got to pick?
Well, I can do the editing. I should be able to do that.
No, I mean the name.
Oh, I like the name Shay.
Shay?
Yeah. So, but we'll see if I get much of a say, or if that's what she looks like.
Fair enough. Well, good luck with that.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
All right. So it looks like we'll have one more of these next week. So we'll plan on next Tuesday. I think that's probably good. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. You guys have a good week.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right.
See ya.
See you.
Bye.